CPAC Sunday Cup. Minister Justin Trudeau giving his daily briefing outside his residence. Let's take you there now.
It's been now for several weeks that health experts ask Canadians to help them slow down the spread of the pandemic. Stay home, restrict your traveling, and do not meet in great groups. So I'd like to thank all the people who follow the directions, and we must all do our part. We all might make sacrifices to protect not only our health but also other people's health. And this is what people do, and it is reassuring, but we have to continue.
Working overtime to keep us safe and keep the country moving. Hospital staff, border agents, store clerks, cashiers, postal workers, delivery folks, pharmacists, cleaning staff, first responders, truck drivers, train conductors, and so many others. They've been working every day so we can work from home and practice social distancing. Thank you for being there for us. Know that all Canadians are grateful for your service. I know that many of you are worried about what might happen next. You're wondering how long this is going to last. You're wondering about your job and your savings. You're worried about your kids not being in school. And we get it. These are uncertain times, and families across the country are concerned. That's why this week we took important steps to support Canadians, protect jobs, and limit the spread of the virus. We unveiled an $82 billion plan to help people and businesses who've fallen on hard times because of COVID-19. As part of this plan, we want to boost the Canada Child Benefit, introduce new benefits to help people who don't qualify for employment insurance, and supplement the GST credit, amongst many other things. Our government also announced new funding for research and a new strategy to mobilize industry to fight COVID-19. After conversations with our colleagues on the other side of the aisle, I can now confirm that the House of Commons will be recalled on Tuesday at noon so we can pass emergency legislation that will put our plan into motion. On that note, I want to thank the House leaders for their cooperation and the members of the opposition for their efforts as we work together to slow the spread of this virus. I know that together we can protect Canadians, save jobs, and set the groundwork for our economy to rebound after this crisis.
En plus de notre stratégie économique,
on top of our economic strategy, we have announced new restrictions for traveling, and we have temporarily closed our borders to international travelers. We have also made an agreement with the United States to prohibit non-essential movements between our two countries. And we are encouraging Canadians who are abroad to come home. But many people are in difficulties to find a flight to fly back to Canada. And yesterday announced that our government would be working with Canadian Airlines for the purpose of making this easier for Canadians to come back home. And the first flight from Morocco with Air Canada has arrived last night, and other flights will be added. And WestJet has announced that from Monday to Wednesday, more than 30 flights are planned for the purpose of taking Canadians back home. Air Transat is working at the moment with World Affairs, Global Affairs, in order to plan flights where the airspace is closed, and thousands of people might be brought back over the next few days. And when there are spots left on Sunwing, the flight is free for people who need it.
More details on what we've announced so far on the government website at Canada.ca. And since there's more support coming this week, that's where you'll find all the information you need and the help you deserve. On fait face à une situation sans précédent.
We're facing an unknown situation without precedent. And if you cannot talk with somebody, or if you're abroad and you cannot find a flight, well, this is, of course, created triggering anxiety. I can assure you the whole of our civil service is working for 24/7 to provide you the help that you deserve. And from the beginning, we told you that we'll have your backs, and that we told you that the government would spare no effort to support you. We went through several important steps over the last few weeks, but work continues, and we won't let you down, and you can count on us.
I want to thank you all for helping us slow the spread of COVID-19. To those of you who usually spend your Sundays in a place of worship, thank you for staying home today. I know it's not easy, but it is deeply appreciated. And to all the kids out there, all of a sudden you've heard you can't go on play dates or have sleepovers. Your playgrounds and schools have closed, and your March break was certainly different than what you'd hoped for. I get it from my kids as well. They're watching a whole lot more movies, but they miss their friends. And at the same time, they're worried about what's going on out there in the world and what their future may hold. I know this is a big change, but we have to do this not just for ourselves, but for our grandparents, our nurses, our doctors, and everyone working at our hospitals. And you kids are helping a lot. The doctors and scientists have been clear that social distancing, which means staying at least 2 meters apart and staying home as much as possible, is the best way to help each other. And you're having to wash your hands a lot. So a special thanks to all you kids. Thank you for helping your parents work from home, for sacrificing your usual day, for doing math class around the kitchen table, and for trusting in science. We're going to have more to say to you soon, so stay tuned. In the meantime, let's make sure we all do our part. Let's fight this together. Merci beaucoup tout le monde. Je suis maintenant content de prendre
Thank you, everybody. I'll be glad to answer your questions. Louis Bouin from Radio Canada, CBC. On social media, we see tons of pictures with many people crowding the spaces, and they do not seem to be worried about social distancing. So what is your message for these people, and what is the threshold for your government to intervene and use coercion? Answer. Well, to everybody, I'm saying stay home, practice social distancing. This is essential in order to slow down the spread of the virus, and also to help our fellow citizens, and also to protect most of all the people who are working in our health systems. Each and everybody has the ability to slow down the spread and to flatten the curve and protect our communities, and we must do it. So we're taking steps federally. Provinces are making the necessary provisions, and we do cooperate for the purpose to do whatever is necessary and will be necessary. But for the time, we wanted to encourage people to stay home and help our country to go through the crisis. In English, please.
I recognize that millions of Canadians are practicing social distancing, are choosing to stay home, are looking for ways to keep 2 meters apart from each other, and taking this very seriously. That's great, because this is a situation in which individual Canadians behaving responsibly will help themselves, help their neighbors, and mostly protect our healthcare workers. This is something we need to do together. We are, of course, continuing to work very closely with all provinces, with different orders of government, to make sure that people are understanding what they need to do and doing it. We will continue to look at possible next steps that may become necessary, but for now we are telling people, stay home, engage in social distancing, protect yourselves, protect our system, and let's get through this strongly as a country.
Le beau temps commence à peine. Les gens vont être de plus en plus tentés de se rassembler, de sortir.
So fine weather is starting, and people are starting to go out. Would it be reasonable to use the war measures, the Emergency Measures Act, in order to have people stay at home?
answer. I understand the desire. People may have to go out, and they may go out, but they should keep their distance, and they should avoid crowding, and they should avoid meeting in congregations. And we, as far as we're concerned, are doing our utmost to guarantee people's security and safety, and we're working with the provinces. And if other necessary steps are to be taken, we will take them.
Encouraging people to stay home and to social distance is not enough. There is mounting evidence of social media, pictures of people packing onto beaches in Vancouver, for example. Why not invoke something stricter like the Emergencies Act? Why not, restrict people's civil liberties to protect their health?
There are many things that are being done and can be done at the local level, at the municipal level, and at the provincial level. The Federal Emergencies Act is a significant step that can and should be taken when we've exhausted all other steps at other orders of government, and the legislation and regulations available to the federal government do not respond or are insufficient to respond to the situation at hand. We continue to work very closely with provinces, with other jurisdictions, to make sure that they are able to do the things that need to be done, and we will continue to look at if it's necessary to move forward with the Emergencies Act.
Your party took down a public appeal that used the COVID crisis to fundraise for the Liberal Party. Why was that taken down, and what did you do about it?
I can't speak for that decision. Obviously, this is a situation in which Canadians need to pull together. We need to be there to support each other. We need to make sure we're using all different methods to connect and pass important messages to Canadians on how to stay safe and how to make sure that we are properly protecting ourselves, our communities, and protecting healthcare workers. I know that everyone needs to use whatever methods of communications they have, but it's not a situation for fundraising.
Hi, it's Annie Bergeron-Oliver with CTV National News. Companies across Canada have said that they're willing and able to retool their production lines and to ramp up production, but they say that they need assurances from the federal government. Will your government guarantee that it will buy supplies like masks and ventilators if companies start producing them immediately?
That is very much part of our industrial strategy that we just announced to get companies across the country to manufacture essential equipment, whether it's ventilators or masks or gowns. We've had already a tremendous positive response from companies. It both creates things that we need in Canada and that will be necessary elsewhere around the world, as well as keeping Canadians at work in factories, contributing to our economic activity. These are things that we're going to continue to do, and we can assure companies that produce these things that we need them and we will use them.
So is that a yes, that companies that are producing them immediately will have their products purchased? And two, are you considering any incentives to keep people home?
We are looking at ways of ensuring that people can stay home by sending EI supports to people who don't normally qualify for them, income replacements that'll make sure that people don't face a choice between having to go out there and work in order to feed their family and possibly put their neighbors and themselves at risk. We want to be able to choose home.
So Brian Mullen at the Global News. I have a question about economic aid for Canadians. Denmark has a very aggressive plan, paying about 75% of people's salaries to avoid mass layoffs and let them keep their jobs and encourage them to stay home, basically freezing their economy in the hopes it'll eventually thaw out with less damage in the long run. Did your government consider this option and rule it out?
We have not ruled out anything. As I said, we put forward a significant package of $27 billion directly into the economy to support workers, to support small businesses, but that was only the initial phase of what is necessary. We are continuing to talk about next steps, looking at best practices from around the world, looking what other countries and jurisdictions are doing to ensure that our economy remains solid, if at a standstill, so that it can pick up again once this crisis is through.
And a question about personal protective equipment, not just for frontline hospital staff, but for other essential workers. Once the virus ramps up, people will burn through it fast. Do we have what we need now, Are you bringing in shipments right now from other countries, including China?
We are confident in our capacity to ramp up to provide protective equipment for frontline hospital staff and others who need it so importantly. This is something that Canada has been working towards for a while now. We will ensure that the equipment is available for those who need it right across the country.
Good morning, Prime Minister Trudeau. Sean Silikoff at the Globe and Mail. I hope your family's doing well as can be in the circumstances like every other person in Canada. Just picking up on my colleague's question about freezing the economy, this seems to be a fairly significant move by a number of countries. Can you share with us your views and your government's views about taking this approach? I've talked this morning to several business leaders, including Goldie Hyder, and they're all concerned that this economy will go into a tailspin, and they think it would be better to push money from the government through them to their employees rather than seeing another week of 500,000 or 1 million Canadians applying to EI and overwhelming your government's resources to process those applications, and then again to fill in more paperwork to apply for their jobs back. Can you tell us a little bit more, maybe go into more detail about your thinking about this approach? Because it seems to be the thought leadership that everyone is looking at in the last couple of days.
We've been listening and speaking with business leaders in this country, top employers, small business groups, representatives right across the country to hear their ideas on how to move forward. We've been listening to opposition leaders who are making different suggestions as well. I can tell you that nothing is off the table, but I can also tell you that there is no one measure that is going to be sufficient to get us through this situation. We are going to need to bring in many different measures that have different impacts on employers, on employees, on workers, on families, on vulnerable Canadians, on Canadians of all sorts of different challenges and situations in order to be able to hold strong through this time of economic stoppage of so much activity, so that we can then, as we are through this, pick up without having lost too much or anything, and without too much delay. Yes, it is obvious that companies that are able to keep people on the payroll longer will find it easier and not have to rehire later, and that is certainly something that we are looking at. It's something we've taken steps already towards with the payroll credit, but there is more to do, and these are the things that we're absolutely looking at. But like I said, there is no one silver bullet. It is going to be many, many different measures brought together in the most efficient way that will help us through this.
And what guidance can you provide Canadians and employers about how long the current maximum containment phase will last before we can shift gears to a more targeted containment where most people can return to work? Will it be weeks, months, or several quarters?
That is a question for scientists. Obviously, we are taking the best advice from top researchers around the world. We're looking at the track of the spread of the disease in China, in places like South Korea, in places like Taiwan and Singapore, looking at the challenges facing Europe and particularly Italy right now, and trying to make sure that we are taking the best possible decisions here in Canada. We know that self-isolation and social distancing is going to be extremely important in the coming weeks. We're going to have to maintain it. We also know that testing on a much larger scale is going to be very important, which is why we're ramping up the amount of tests done by tens of thousands every single day. We will continue to look to do exactly what we need to do in the time it takes. I wish anyone could give a date at which point this will all be behind us, but that really depends not just on what we do today, but what we keep doing tomorrow and into next week and into next month. And that's why we all need to be working together to get through this, as I know Canadians will.
Thank you. We'll now go to the phone for a few questions. If you'll have one question and a quick follow-up. Moderator?
Thank you. Merci. The next question is from Raymond Fillon. The next question is from Raymond Fillon. Your line is open. Votre ligne est ouverte.
Raymond Fillon, please go ahead.
Mute, Ray.
Pardonnez-moi. Bonjour, Monsieur le Premier ministre. Je disais donc pour
Hello, Prime Minister. To follow up on my colleague's question, Doctors, business people are asking you for more stringent or even more coercive measures to make sure people stay at home. Why do you believe it is not yet time to order people to stay home and just not to travel or to go out? We know that provincially and municipally there are measures that can be put in place to measure people's movements. For the federal government to take that step, that would take circumstances where we've really gone beyond anything that can be done by the municipality and by the province. An emergency measure at the federal level to exercise those powers, we are not there yet, but we are watching and monitoring the situation carefully to see if that ever becomes necessary.
Merci.
Thank you.
La prochaine question est de Guillaume Saint-Pierre du Journal de Montréal. Your line is open.
Guillaume Saint-Pierre, Journal de Montréal. Please go ahead. Good morning, Mr. Trudeau. You talked about an airlift for Peru and Spain. When will those flights leave to bring back Canadians who are in those countries? I can assure you that Global Affairs Canada is working directly with governments, not only in Peru and elsewhere, but around the world. They're working to ensure that we can land at the airports we need, that we can both land and take off. Airspaces are closed, so we need authorization, and we believe that we will be able to have those flights soon. There are a large number of Canadians waiting for those flights, and we're working very hard to bring them home as quickly as we can. It will take a bit more patience, however. So is this a matter of days or a week? It's a matter of days. We hope. Yesterday, you said also that you were sorry to say that some Canadians would not be able to come home. What will you say to Canadians who may be stuck in Peru, for example, because they're ill and they can't come home and may have to find care in places that are somewhat less advanced, medical facilities that are less advanced? What do you tell their families? First of all, as I said, at any given time, 3 million Canadians are outside the country, and not everyone will be able to or will even want to come back. What we're telling people who have no choice but to remain where they are, to make sure they self-isolate, to be very careful. Please register on the website at travel.gc.ca. We will do everything we can. We're providing funding to help people who have to remain where they are. But this is an unprecedented situation, and we don't always have the means to help everyone as much as we would wish. But we will try to help as many people as possible, and that is what Global Affairs Canada is trying to achieve as it works with airlines and others, to bring back as many Canadians as possible.
Thank you. Merci. La dernière question est de, the last question
The last
is from
question.
David Youngblood from Reuters, Ottawa. Votre ligne est ouverte. Your line is open.
David, you might be on mute as well.
Good grief. And there I was sending a tweet mocking another colleague for having done the same
There you
thing.
go. It's yeah.
Anyway, okay.
You're live now, David, so you can ask your question.
Thank you, kindly. You talked about the next weeks of social isolation, but Paddy Haidu, your health minister, made clear yesterday that we're talking about months, not weeks. Now, this is surely the need to keep the economy from freezing over months rather than weeks surely means, as my other colleagues have asked you, that you're going to have to boost your reaction. The fiscal stimulus plan is going to have to be much bigger than the $27 billion you've announced.
Yes, as we've said, what we announced this past week, the $27 billion directly into the economy, the $55 billion in deferred taxes, these are only a very first step. We're looking now at what those next steps are to ensure that our economy is able to pick up against once we're through this, whether it takes weeks or months. It is likely to take months before we're fully through this. That's why supporting directly to Canadians, support directly to small businesses, to large businesses, to industry, to various sectors that will be much harder hit. These are things we are busy looking at in order so that once we move through this, we are able to get back to where we were before as quickly as possible.
Great, thank you.
Effectivement, nous reconnaissons que ce que nous avons fait la semaine passée.
We recognize that what we announced last week, the $27 billion in direct support and the $55 billion in deferred taxes, that is going to help, but that is only a first step. We realize we will have to take many other measures, be it direct measures for small businesses, industries, workers, sectors. We know that the overall goal is to get through this crisis, this extreme economic slowdown, and then revitalize the economy quickly afterwards. It's going to be difficult. It is going to require many different solutions and a collective effort, but we will do what we need to do, and we will come through this together as Canadians. Thank you, everyone. Have a good Sunday.